Hello, friends. You're watching The Night Watchman, where every day you'll hear a brand new horror story that will send chills down your spine. But to keep bringing you these terrifying tales, we need your love and support. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now let's begin the story. I never believed in curses until that New Year's Eve in Milford, Vermont. My name is Emily Carter, and I had just turned 28 when I moved there from bustling Chicago, seeking a quieter life after a messy breakup. Milford was one of those picture-perfect small towns nestled in the Green Mountains, with snow-capped pines and colonial houses that looked like they belonged in a holiday card. But beneath the charm, there was something off. Whispers about the old Hawthorne Manor on the outskirts, abandoned since the 1920s. Locals said it was cursed, tied to a tragedy on New Year's Eve a century ago. I dismissed it as folklore, the kind bored townsfolk spun to pass long winters. It all started in early December 2025. I'd taken a job as a graphic designer for a local firm, remote mostly, but it got me out of my tiny apartment occasionally. My neighbor, Mrs. Agnes Whitaker, a spry 70-year-old widow, was the first to warn me. She lived in the faded blue Victorian next door, with lace curtains that always seemed to twitch. "Don't go poking around Hawthorne Manor, dear," she said one afternoon while handing me a plate of gingerbread cookies. "Especially not around the holidays. Bad things happen there on the turn of the year." I laughed it off. "What's the story? Ghosts of parties past?" She didn't smile. Instead, she leaned in, her voice dropping to a rasp. "Back in 1925, Elias Hawthorne threw the grandest New Year's ball in town. He was a wealthy mill owner, but rumor had it he dabbled in the occult, trying to cheat death or something foolish. That night, as the clock struck midnight, the lights went out and screams echoed through the house. When morning came, everyone was gone, vanished, no bodies, no trace, just bloodstains on the ballroom floor that no one's ever scrubbed clean." Her eyes gleamed with a mix of fear and fascination. "They say Elias made a deal with something dark, and every 25 years on New Year's Eve, it comes back to collect. 1925, 1950, 1975, 2000, and now 2025. Stay away, Emily." I nodded politely, but inside I was intrigued. As a kid, I devoured horror novels, but real life? Nah. Still, the story stuck with me. That weekend, I drove out to the manor with my friend Jake Thompson, a local mechanic I'd met at the diner. Jake was tall, with an easy smile and a pickup truck that rattled like it was haunted itself. "You're nuts for wanting to see this place," he said, navigating the snowy backroads. "But hey, adventure before the holidays, right?" Hawthorne Manor loomed at the end of an overgrown driveway, its turreted roof sagging under fresh powder. The windows were boarded up, but vines crept through cracks like fingers. We parked and trudged through the snow, flashlights cutting through the dusk. "See? Just an old ruin," I said, snapping photos on my phone for inspiration. Maybe I'd design a spooky poster for fun. But as we circled the back, I spotted something odd, a fresh footprint in the snow, leading to a cellar door that hung slightly ajar. "Jake, look." He froze. "Probably kids or squatters. Let's bail." But curiosity won. We pushed the door open, descending into musty darkness. The air was thick with dust and a faint metallic tang. My beam caught shelves of yellowed books and strange symbols etched on the walls. Pentagrams, runes, stuff from bad movies. At the far end, a dusty journal lay open on a crate. I picked it up, flipping through brittle pages. It was Elias Hawthorne's diary, entries from 1925. "The ritual promises eternal life. Midnight, when the year turns, the veil thins. I shall summon the keeper." The last page was smeared with what looked like dried blood. "It demands a toll. One soul per guest. God forgive me." A chill ran down my spine. Jake yanked my arm. "Em, we're leaving. Now." As we climbed out, I swear I heard a whisper, like distant laughter echoing from the house. We drove back in silence, the journal tucked in my coat. I should have burned it. Over the next weeks, Milford geared up for the holidays. Twinkling lights draped Main Street, and the annual New Year's Eve bash was set at the town hall, a tradition to Ward off the old spirits, as folks joked. I threw myself into work, but the journal haunted me. I'd read it obsessively at night, piecing together Elias's descent into madness. He believed in an entity called the Veil Keeper, a being that guarded the boundary between years, feeding on regrets and unfulfilled promises. To summon it, he'd hosted that fateful party, inviting the town's elite. But it backfired. The keeper took them all, binding their souls to the manor. I confided in Jake and our new friend, Sarah Mills, a barista at the local coffee shop with a goth vibe and a tattoo of a raven on her wrist. This could be a hoax, Sarah said one evening at my place, poring over the journal with mulled wine in hand. But let's check records. We hit the town library, digging through microfilm. Sure enough, newspaper clippings from January 1st, 1926. Mysterious disappearance at Hawthorne Ball. 30 guests vanish overnight. No explanations, just speculation about bootleggers or a mass elopement. But one article mentions survivors' accounts from 1950. Similar party, similar vanishings. The pattern held for 75 and 2000, though those were hushed up as accidents. Why every 25 years, I muttered. Sarah shrugged. Numerology, or the keeper's hunger cycle. Jake rolled his eyes. You two are buying into this crap. It's probably just urban legend amplified by bored reporters. But doubts crept in. Strange things started happening. I'd wake to scratching at my window only to find frost patterns resembling the manor's runes. My phone would glitch, playing snippets of old-timey jazz music at random. And Mrs. Whitaker? She stopped answering her door, her curtains drawn tight. Christmas came and went quietly. I spent it alone, video calling family back in Chicago. You sound tense, Em, my mom said. Everything okay? I lied, saying it was just the cold. But as New Year's approached, the town buzzed with unease. Whispers in the diner. This year's the cycle. Some folks plan to skip the bash, holding up at home. I couldn't let it go. On December 30th, Jake, Sarah, and I decided to investigate the manor one last time. If it's real, we expose it, I said. If not, we debunk it and party like normal. We armed ourselves with flashlights, salt, Sarah's idea from occult forums, and a GoPro for footage. The drive felt longer in the deepening snow. The manor looked even more foreboding under a full moon, shadows twisting like living things. We entered through the cellar again, the door now wide open as if inviting us. Inside, the air was warmer, almost humid, with a faint glow emanating from upstairs. We crept up creaky stairs into the main hall. Dust sheets covered furniture, but the ballroom doors were ajar. Pushing them open, we gasped. The room was pristine. Polished floors, crystal chandeliers sparkling, as if ready for a gala. This wasn't like this before, Jake whispered. In the center, a grandfather clock ticked ominously, its hands frozen at 11:55. As we approached, the journal in my bag grew warm. I pulled it out. New pages had appeared, ink fresh. The guests arrive. The toll must be paid. A low hum filled the air, like distant chanting. Sarah clutched her salt shaker. We need to leave. But the doors slammed shut behind us. Wind howled through sealed windows, extinguishing our lights. In the darkness, figures materialized, ghostly silhouettes in 1920s attire, waltzing silently. I backed against the wall, heart pounding. This isn't real, I stammered. But then Elias appeared, translucent and gaunt, his eyes hollow. You brought the book, he rasped. The invitation. Jake swung his flashlight like a bat, but it passed through the apparitions. The clock struck midnight. Bong, bong, each chime echoing like thunder. The dancers turned, their faces melting into screams. The keeper emerged from the shadows, a towering void, tendrils of darkness coiling like smoke, eyes like dying stars. It spoke in my mind. Regrets, promises unbroken. Feed me. Flashbacks assaulted me, my failed relationship, dreams deferred, lies to family. Sarah screamed as tendrils wrapped her ankle, pulling her toward the void. Jake lunged, but it swatted him like a fly, his body crumpling. I ran, journal clutched tight, but the void pursued, whispering temptations. Join them, eternal life, no pain. Tripping over a loose board, I fell. The journal skidded away, pages flipping to a hidden ritual, Elias's reversal spell. With trembling hands, I chanted the words, Veil Keeper, return to the abyss. The toll is refused. The room shook. The keeper howled, its form fracturing. Ghosts faded, doors bursting open. I grabbed Jake. He was breathing, dazed, and dragged him out, Sarah limping behind. We fled into the snow, the manor collapsing in a roar of timber and dust. Back in town, the New Year's bash raged on, oblivious. We burst into the hall, covered in grime, babbling about the curse. Folks laughed, thinking it a prank, but Mrs. Whitaker, in the corner, nodded knowingly. You broke it, child, for now. The next day, headlines buzzed. Historic manor collapses in storm. No mention of us. Jake recovered with bruises. Sarah swore off occult stuff. Me? I moved back to Chicago by spring. The journal burned to ash. But sometimes on quiet nights, I hear jazz faintly playing. And I wonder, was it truly broken? Or just delayed another 25 years? Story 2, I first heard the whispers on New Year's Eve, 2024, in the frost-bitten hills of Elk County, Pennsylvania. My name's Ethan Harlow, and I'd driven up from Pittsburgh to my family's old cabin off Route 120, chasing solitude after a brutal divorce. The place had been in the family since the 1800s. Log walls creaking under pine beams, a stone fireplace that smelled of ash and regret. Snow piled high outside, blanketing the dirt road that twisted through black walnut groves. No cell service, no neighbors for miles. Just me, a bottle of bourbon, and the countdown to a new year I didn't want. It started innocently enough. Around 10 p.m., as fireworks popped faintly from Ridgeway down the valley, I built a fire and scrolled old photos on my phone. Last battery before it died. That's when I noticed the Polaroids tucked behind a loose floorboard in the loft. Dozens of them, yellowed and curled, dated December 31st, 1952. Black and white shots of a party, men in fedoras, women in fur coats, laughing around this very cabin. My great-uncle Harlan Harlow's handwriting on the back. Midnight gathering, the echo comes at 12. Weird family lore, I figured. Grandpa always said Harlan vanished that night, chalked up to a drunken wander into the woods. But these photos, faces blurred in the corners, like someone had smudged them deliberately. One showed a woman in a red dress, mid-laugh, her eyes wide as if she'd heard something. Caption, she heard it first. I shrugged it off, cracked the bourbon. Midnight approached. The wind howled, rattling the windows like bony fingers. At 11:55, the power flickered, common up here with the storm. Then from the basement, a soft thump, like a boot on wood. I froze, glass halfway to my lips. The cabin was empty. I'd checked. Probably a raccoon, I muttered, grabbing the flashlight from the kitchen drawer. The basement door was warped oak, swollen from damp. It stuck when I yanked it open, revealing concrete steps slick with meltwater. My beam cut through cobwebs, landing on rusted canning jars and a coal chute sealed with plywood. Nothing moved, but as I turned, the thump came again, deliberate, from the far wall. Heart pounding, I swept the light. There, scratched into the stone foundation. The echo wakes at midnight. Don't answer. Faded like it was from Harlan's time. I laughed nervously, old graffiti. Back upstairs, I bolted the door and poured another drink. 11:59. The clock on the mantel ticked louder than it should. 12 struck. Fireworks boomed distantly. And then, a whisper. Not from outside, but inside my skull, like a radio tuned between stations. Ethan, I dropped the glass. It shattered on the hearth. No one knew I was here. No one called me Ethan except family, and they were all dead or estranged. Stay for the gathering. The fire dimmed, shadows stretching like claws. I bolted every lock, checked every window. Snow swirled against the glass, but no tracks outside. Grabbing the axe from the woodpile by the door, just in case, I paced the living room. That's when the Polaroids caught my eye again. One had shifted, now face up on the floor. The red-dressed woman, but her smile was gone. Her mouth gaped in a silent scream. By 12:15, the whispers grew into murmurs, a chorus of voices, overlapping, pleading. Join us. Echo the call. They named places I'd never told a soul. My ex's apartment in Shadyside, the dive bar in Erie where I'd drowned my sorrows. Personal, invasive. I needed air. Bundling into my coat, I crunched through knee-deep snow toward my truck, keys jangling. The engine turned over once, twice, dead. Battery fine that morning. Headlights flickered on their own, illuminating footprints. Fresh ones circling the cabin, leading to the basement window. Small like a woman's heels, but sunk deep into the drifts. Impossible weight. Back inside, I barricaded the door with the oak table. The murmurs turned to chants. Harlan answered. Now you. I dug through Grandpa's old trunk, finding Harlan's journal amid moth-eaten blankets. Feverish scrawl from 1952. December 30th. Party at the cabin. Folks from town celebrating New Year's. Strange wind tonight. Carries voices. Old-timers say it's the echo from the mine collapse in '28. Miners trapped underground, their last screams bouncing in the hollows. Every New Year's, it rises with the midnight bells. The Ridgeway mine disaster. I'd heard vague stories. 28 souls buried when the shaft caved, their cries supposedly echoing for days. But the official report said they died instantly. December 31st. It's 11 p.m. Voices in the walls. Not wind. They know our names. Mary Beth in the red dress heard hers first. She went to the basement to listen closer. Came back wrong. Eyes glassy, humming their tune. Midnight struck. She walked into the snow and didn't stop. Others followed. I won't answer. The last entry. It promises a new year without pain, but it's a lie. They're not gone. They're waiting. A knock at the basement door, 3 slow raps. I gripped the axe, sweat freezing on my brow. Down the stairs, beams shaking, the plywood over the coal chute had buckled. Black void beyond, exhaling cold like a breath. Whispers poured out. Ethan, echo us. Against every instinct, I leaned in. Who are you? My voice boomed back, but distorted, layered with others. We are the echo, trapped in the hollow. Answer and join the gathering. Faces flickered in the dark, pale, eyeless, mouthing my name. Mary's twisted, Harlan's pleading. Real as the snow. I slammed the plywood back, nails from the toolbox sealing it. But the wraps moved, upstairs now, at the front door. Peering through the frosted glass, I saw her. Red dress smeared with coal dust, snow melting off her skin in rivulets. Mary Beth. She shouldn't exist. 1952 called. Dance with us, Ethan. New year, new echoes. The door handle turned slowly. I swung the axe. Wood splintered, but she was gone. Footprints trailed inside now, wet across the floorboards. Hours blurred. I huddled by the fire, journal clutched like a Bible. Dawn couldn't come soon enough, but the storm raged. Whispers evolved, visions. My ex's voice begging forgiveness. Mom's calling from her grave. Each one pulled, promising erasure of regrets. At 3 a.m., the loft stairs creaked. Footsteps, multiple. I climbed, axe ready. Polaroids everywhere, animated. Partygoers turning, faces dissolving into screams. A shadow lunged, cold hands like iron on my throat. I hacked wildly. It dissipated into mist, reeking of damp earth and sulfur. Downstairs, the basement door hung open. The plywood gone. A tunnel yawned in the foundation, raw dirt sloping into black. Wind howled up it, carrying the miner's wail. Echo! I ran, burst into the storm. Truck be damned. Branches clawed like fingers through the woods. Whispers chasing. Don't leave the gathering. Miles later, lungs burning, I stumbled onto Route 120. A plow truck idled, driver blinking at my wild eyes. You from the Harlow place? Heard that cabin's cursed. Mine echoes every New Year's. Folks go in, don't come out right. He drove me to Ridgeway, hospitalized for hypothermia, muttering about voices. Docs called it stress. But I saw the news next day. Fresh cave-in at the old mine site. Rescuers heard screams, real ones. but no bodies, just echoes. Now it's New Year's Eve 2025. I'm back in Pittsburgh, lights on, doors locked. But tonight at midnight, the phone will ring. Static, then my name. Because the echo doesn't forget. It hungers for new voices. I won't answer. But part of me wonders, what if I did? What regrets would it swallow? Story 3. I never believed in curses until that New Year's Eve in the Adirondacks. My name is Emily Carter, and I'm from Brooklyn, New York, born and raised in the hustle of the city, where the only ghosts are the ones from bad relationships. But family secrets have a way of dragging you back, don't they? It all started when my grandmother, Agnes, passed away last summer. She left me her old cabin up in Lake Placid, a rickety place she'd inherited from her parents back in the 1940s. "It's yours now, Em," her will said, "but promise me you'll never spend New Year's there alone." I laughed it off as old lady superstition. After all, what harm could come from a quiet getaway? My boyfriend Jake had just dumped me over Christmas, said I was too intense, and I needed to reset. So on December 30th, 2025, I packed my Subaru with enough wine, books, and snacks to last a week and drove north, leaving the skyscrapers behind for snow-covered pines. The drive was brutal, 6 hours through flurries that turned the highways into white-knuckle slaloms. Lake Placid looked postcard perfect when I arrived. Twinkling holiday lights on Main Street, tourists snapping photos by the Olympic ski jumps. But the cabin was off the beaten path, down a winding dirt road called Whispering Pines Lane, about 5 miles from town. It was a 2-story A-frame with weathered cedar siding, surrounded by dense forest. No neighbors for at least a mile. I unlocked the door with the antique key Grandma had mailed me, and the musty smell hit like a wave. Old wood, faint lavender from her sachets, and something metallic underneath, like rust. I spent the first day settling in. The living room had a stone fireplace, and I lit a fire to chase away the chill. Upstairs, there were 2 bedrooms, Grandma's with its quilted bedspread, and a smaller one that must have been my great-grandparents'. In the attic, I found boxes of old photos, yellowed snapshots of family gatherings from the 50s and 60s. One caught my eye, a group of people around a New Year's table, toasting with champagne. But in the background, through the window, there was a shadowy figure in the snow, face blurred. I shrugged it off as a smudge and headed back down. That night, as I sipped Merlot by the fire, I heard the first odd sound, a soft scratching, like nails on wood coming from the walls. Mice, I thought. Old houses have them. I turned up the radio to drown it out, some station playing holiday classics, and fell asleep on the couch, dreaming of Jake's face morphing into something monstrous. The next morning, December 31st, I woke to fresh snow blanketing everything. New Year's Eve. I decided to hike the trails nearby, clear my head. The Adirondacks are beautiful but unforgiving, miles of evergreens dusted white with frozen streams cracking underfoot. I bundled up in my parka and boots, grabbed a thermos of coffee, and set out. About a mile in, I found an old stone marker half buried in the snow. Elias Hawthorne, 1892 to 1925, lost to the whisper. Hawthorne, that was Grandma's maiden name. My great-great-grandfather? The date struck me. He died on New Year's Eve, exactly a century ago. Curiosity piqued, I snapped a photo with my phone and hurried back as the wind picked up. Back at the cabin, I dug deeper into those attic boxes. There were letters, brittle and faded. One from 1926, from my great-great-grandmother to her sister. Elias vanished that night. We heard the whispers calling him out into the storm. The sheriff said it was exposure. But I know better. The forest takes one every generation on the eve. Chills ran down my spine. Superstition, right? But then I found a newspaper clipping from the Lake Placid News, January 1926. Local man disappears in blizzard. Elias Hawthorne, 33, last seen leaving his home on Whispering Pines Lane after reporting voices in the wind. Search parties found only footprints leading into the woods. Footprints that stopped abruptly, as if he'd been lifted away. I tried to shake it off. It was just family lore, amplified by isolation. I prepped for the evening, More wine, a frozen pizza in the oven, and Netflix on my laptop, spotty Wi-Fi. But it worked. As dusk fell, the scratching returned, louder this time, rhythmic, like Morse code. I checked the walls, the chimney. Nothing. Then around 8 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Don't listen to them. I stared at it. No signal bars. How? I texted back, who is this? No response. Probably a glitch, delayed from town. By 10 p.m., the wind howled like a banshee, rattling the windows. I poured another glass and scrolled through old photos on my phone, trying to ignore the growing unease. That's when I heard it. Not scratching, but whispering. Faint at first, like leaves rustling, but then words. Emily, join us. My heart pounded. It was coming from outside, or was it inside? I grabbed a flashlight and peered out the window. The snow swirled in eddies, but there, footprints in the fresh powder, leading from the tree line to my porch. Human-sized, barefoot. Panic set in. I bolted the door, checked the locks. It's the wind, I muttered. Just the wind playing tricks. But the whispers grew. Names, dates. Elias, 1925. Margaret, Grandma's aunt, 1955. Thomas, a cousin, 1985. All on New Year's Eve, all lost to the whisper. I remembered Grandma's warning. Why hadn't I listened? Midnight approached. Fireworks echoed faintly from town, but here isolation amplified everything. The power flickered and died. Darkness swallowed the cabin save for the fire's glow. The whispers turned to pleas. Emily, it's cold out here. Let us in. I huddled by the hearth, phone dead now. No charging without electricity. Something banged on the door. Once, twice. I screamed, go away! Then silence. Eerie, absolute. I crept to the window. The footprints were gone, erased by the wind. Relief washed over me. Maybe it was over. I laughed shakily, nerves frayed. But as the clock struck midnight, Grandma's old grandfather clock chiming 12, I felt a draft. The door was ajar. I hadn't opened it. A figure stood in the threshold, cloaked in shadow, snowflakes melting on its shoulders. It wasn't human, not anymore. Its face shifted. Elias's stern jaw, Margaret's kind eyes, Thomas's youthful smile, all flickering like a bad hologram. We've waited for you, it whispered, voice a chorus. The forest hungers every 30 years. Your blood calls us home. I backed away, grabbing a poker from the fire. This isn't real. But it advanced, tendrils of mist coiling from its form, wrapping around my ankles like icy chains. The backstory flooded my mind. Elias, cursed by a Native American legend after logging sacred land. The whisper, a spirit that claimed descendants on the eve to atone. Grandma had escaped by never being alone. But me? Isolated, broken-hearted fool. It lunged. I swung the poker, connecting with nothing but air. Laughter echoed. Mine. Theirs. The mist enveloped me, pulling me toward the door, the woods beyond. I fought, clawing at the floorboards, but the pull was inexorable. Snow bit my skin as I was dragged outside, whispers promising peace and end to loneliness. They found my car the next day, engine cold, cabin empty. Footprints led into the forest, stopping midway. The sheriff called it exposure, a tragic accident. But if you visit Whispering Pines Lane on New Year's Eve, listen closely. You might hear one more voice in the wind. Mine, calling for the next in line. The whispers never stop. They wait. For you. I survived? No. This is the curse. Trapped in the telling, luring others. Don't come looking, stay away. But if you must, Happy New Year. Wait, that's not right. The end. Wait, no, keep reading. It's not over. The story pulls you in, doesn't it? Just like it did me. Page break. Let's continue. I need to make this longer to hit 8 to 10 pages. The user asked for depth. Back to the narrative. Actually, let's expand the backstory. Flashback time. As the mist dragged me, memories not my own flooded in. Elias Hawthorne, my great-great-grandfather, was a lumber baron in the early 1900s. He clear-cut swaths of the Adirondacks, ignoring warnings from the local Adirondack guides, descendants of the Mohawk people, who spoke of the whisperer, a guardian spirit of the forest. It protects the old growth, they'd say. Disturb it, and it demands payment. Elias laughed, built his cabin on sacred ground, and prospered, until New Year's Eve, 1925. That night, a party at the cabin, friends, family, champagne flowing. Elias stepped outside for a cigar, heard the whisper. His name, soft as falling snow. He followed, drawn by curiosity or compulsion. They found his hat the next day. Nothing else. The family hushed it up, but the pattern began. 30 years later, 1955. Margaret Hawthorne, Elias's daughter, my great-aunt. She was a school teacher in Plattsburgh, visited the cabin for a quiet New Year's retreat. Diaries found later described whispers starting days before. Names of the lost. She vanished, footprints ending in the woods. The family blamed a bear, but no tracks but hers. Then 1985. Thomas Hawthorne, a cousin from Albany. He was a yuppie stockbroker, thought the cabin would be a cool spot for a party. Invited friends, but they bailed due to a storm. Alone, he heard the calls. His Walkman was found blasting static, footsteps leading nowhere. Grandma Agnes knew. She'd researched it all, pieced together the curse. It's generational, she'd told me once, years ago, over tea in her Brooklyn brownstone. Skips some, claims others. Always on the eve, always alone. That's why her warning. But I, urban skeptic, ignored it. Back in the present, or was it? As the entity pulled me, I screamed for help. No one. The forest closed in, trees like skeletal fingers. Suspense built. Would I escape? I remembered a detail from the letters, a talisman. Elias had mentioned a silver locket with a lock of hair from the Mohawk elder who'd cursed him. Where was it? Frantic, I twisted free for a moment, scrambling back to the cabin. The figure pursued, whispers turning to howls. I rifled through the attic boxes. There, the locket, tarnished but intact. I clutched it, chanting nonsense words I'd seen in the diaries. Return to the earth, release the bound. The figure halted, flickering, faces contorted in agony. Not yet, it rasped. The debt unpaid. But the pull weakened. I bolted the door, held the locket like a crucifix. The night dragged, whispers fading to murmurs. Dawn broke. Power returned. The snow sparkled innocently. No footprints. Was it over? I packed and fled, driving straight to Brooklyn. But that night in my apartment, a scratch at the window. A whisper. Emily. The curse wasn't broken, just delayed. It waits for the next eve. If you're reading this, stay with loved ones. Don't be alone. Or do. The forest calls. The end? No, that's too abrupt. Let's build more suspense. Expanding, months later back in the city, I researched more. Visited the Adirondack Museum in Blue Mountain Lake. An exhibit on local legends mentioned the Whisperer, a spirit born from colonial greed, claiming souls to balance the scales. Historians dismissed it as folklore, but one curator, an old man named Harlan from Saranac Lake, pulled me aside. Hawthorne's, eh? Your kin started it. Only way to end it is to return what's taken. Plant a tree on the sacred spot every year. But no one's found it. I returned in spring with seedlings, hiked the trails guided by old maps, found a clearing with ancient stumps. The site, planted, whispered apologies. Peace? New Year's 2026 approached. I stayed in the city surrounded by friends at a Times Square party. Ball drop, cheers. But at midnight my phone buzzed. Thank you. From unknown, then silence. Is it over? I think so. But sometimes in the wind through the subway grates, I hear a faint call. Stay safe. Story 4. It started with the snow. Thick, relentless flakes bearing the back roads of Elk County, Pennsylvania, turning the world into a silent white shroud. My name's Harlan Brooks, and on December 31st, 2024, I was driving my beat-up Ford F-150 from Pittsburgh back to my family's old cabin in Benezet. The radio crackled with countdowns to midnight, New Year's Eve bullshit about fresh starts. But out here, in the heart of the Allegheny National Forest, fresh starts felt like a joke. I'd been away for 5 years, dodging family drama after Dad's suicide. Mom said she needed me home this time, for one last New Year together. Her voice on the phone had that shaky edge, like she was holding back tears. The tires crunched over ice as I crested a hill near the Quahana Wildlife Area. That's when I saw it, taillights flickering in the blizzard ahead, a car half buried in a ditch. No one around. I pulled over, cursing under my breath. Hero complex, maybe, but you don't leave someone out here to freeze. Grabbing my flashlight, I trudged through knee-deep snow. The vehicle was a sleek black SUV, plates from Ohio. Driver's door ajar, keys in the ignition still. Inside, a woman's purse spilled open, lipstick, wallet with ID. Sarah Klein, 32, Cleveland address. No blood, no sign of struggle. Just gone. I scanned the woods. Hello? My voice muffled by the wind. Nothing. Back in the truck, I called 911, but the signal died mid-ring. Great. Mom was waiting, probably with her famous black-eyed peas and cornbread. I pocketed Sarah's wallet, evidence I'd tell the cops later, and drove on, unease gnawing at me. The cabin lights glowed a mile ahead, smoke curling from the chimney. Home, sweet hell. Mom greeted me at the door, thinner than I remembered, eyes sunken like she'd aged a decade. Harlan, thank God. She hugged me too tight, smelling of pine and something metallic. Inside, the fire roared, but the place felt off. Shadows too long, air too still. Where's Uncle Ray? I asked. He usually crashed New Year's here. Out hunting, she said quickly, ladling stew. Deer season's open late this year. We ate in silence, the clock ticking toward midnight. TV droned fireworks from Times Square, but she muted it. Tell me about the city, she urged, but her gaze kept drifting to the window. That's when I noticed the photo on the mantel. Dad, me at 12, and a girl I'd never seen. Blonde, smiling about my age then. Who's this? Mom's spoon clattered. No one. Old friend. Lie, I pressed and she sighed. That was Ellie. Your cousin, sorta. Dad's brother's girl. She visited once back in '98. New Year's Eve. Backstory trickled out over bourbon. Grandpa Amos had built this cabin in the 1950s, back when Elk County was logging boomtown. But Amos wasn't just a logger, he dabbled in cures for the locals. Quahana had a secret, the Quahana Nuclear Reservation, old Army site from the Cold War. Radiation leaks in the 60s mutated wildlife, folks said. Amos claimed he could fix it with rituals from some Pennsylvania Dutch grimoire he found in a mill attic. Blood moon ceremonies, Mom whispered. Full moon on New Year's, he'd say it cleansed the land. Ellie came that fateful '98 New Year's. Her dad, Amos's son, died in a mill accident, radiation poisoning they called it. She was 15, grieving, and Amos promised to speak to her father. Mom was pregnant with me then, watched the whole thing from the attic window. Midnight struck. Amos led Ellie into the woods behind the cabin, chanting in broken German. Snow fell like now. They never came back. Search parties found Amos's body frozen by dawn, throat slashed like an animal attack. Ellie? Vanished. No trace. Dad always said the forest took her, Mom finished, voice hollow. For payment. I laughed it off. Superstition, radiation myths. But Sarah Klein's wallet burned in my pocket. I slipped out to the porch at 11:45 p.m., lit a smoke, watched fireworks pop distantly over Dubois. That's when I heard it, a woman's scream, faint from the tree line. Flashlight beam cut through snow. Footprints fresh, leading into the dark. Small boots, like a woman's. Sarah? Heart pounding, I followed. Branches clawed my jacket. 50 yards in, I found her. Sarah Klein, kneeling in a clearing, digging frantically with bare hands. Blood on her fingers, eyes wild. Help, she gasped. It's under here. What is? Snow muffled my words. The door. She clawed faster, unearthing a rotted wooden hatch, like an old root cellar. It creaked open, revealing stone steps descending into black. A wind howled up, carrying whispers. German? Laughter? Sarah lunged for it. I grabbed her arm. No! She spun, face twisting. Not fear, hunger. You hear them too. The voices, they promised new beginnings. Her nails raked my cheek. I shoved her back. She tumbled down the steps, thudding into silence. I slammed the hatch, piled snow over it, ran back to the cabin. Mom was waiting, shotgun in hand. Saw you from the window. It's happening again. Midnight boomed, fireworks, church bells from Ridgeway. But outside the screams multiplied. Voices in the wind. Come, Zris. Come across. Uncle Ray burst through the door, snow-crusted, hauling a deer carcass. No, wait. The deer had human eyes. Sarah's eyes staring blank. Ray, Mom whimpered. He grinned, teeth black. Family tradition, Harlan. Amos started it. The forest hungers on New Year's. Radiation twisted it. Makes things eternal. Ellie paid first, then strays like her. He nodded at Sarah's body. You brought this one perfect. Backstory flooded back. Dad's suicide in 19. Ray found him in the woods, throat slashed, same as Amos. He tried to end it, Ray said, but the woods don't let go. I bolted for the truck, but snowdrifts had it pinned. Ray's laugh echoed. Mom blocked the door. Stay, it's in the blood. I fought, fists, fire poker. Ray's strength was unnatural, eyes glowing faint green. Mom chanted softly, the grimoire open on the table. I glimpsed pages, symbols, blood rites, warnings in Dutch. New Year binds the veil, it read. Feed the hollow or it feeds. Pinned against the wall, Ray whispered Ellie's fate. She'd gone willingly into the hatch that night, seeking her dad. Below was the hollow, an old mine shaft, flooded with glowing seepage from Quahana. Amos sacrificed her to cleanse it, but the ritual reversed. The hollow woke, an entity of radiation and grudge, mimicking lost souls to lure more. It mimicked voices, footprints, screams. Dad tried to burn it out, torched the hatch, but it claimed him. Ray, keep her now. Fed it strays every New Year's to keep the cabin safe. You next, Harlan, Ray growled. Fresh blood seals it till 26. I need him. Grabbed the poker, drove it through his eye. He dropped, twitching. Mom lunged. I swung, crack. She crumpled. Outside, the screams peaked, snow swirling into faces. Ellie, Dad, Sarah. The hatch unseen in the woods yawned wide, green light pulsing. I ran into the blizzard, no plan, just away. Branches whispered my name. Footprints appeared ahead, not mine. Small boots, a girl's. Ellie. She turned, face half melted, eyes pleading. Help me end it. Drawn forward, I stumbled to the clearing. Hatch open, stairs slick with ice and glow. Voices below, countdowns but backward. 10, 9. Family names. 5. Harlan. I teetered on the edge. New Year dawned. Fireworks lit the sky. One step and peace? Fresh start? No. I backed away, fled through the storm toward Route 120. Dawn broke gray, plow trucks rumbled. I flagged one down near Emporium, babbling about cabins and hatches. Troopers searched. Cabin empty, no bodies, hatch gone under snow. Radiation fever, they said. Quahana myths. They dropped me at a motel in St. Mary's. I watched ball drop reruns, Sarah's wallet still in my pocket. ID photo smiled back, same as Ellie's on the mantle. That night, TV static hissed voices. Come, Zris. Footprints outside my window, small boots melting snow. I left Elk County at dawn, but New Year's 2025. I'll be back. The Hollow calls family home. Story 5, I never believed in ghosts until that New Year's Eve in 2024. My name is Emily Harper, and I grew up in the sleepy town of Willow Creek, New York, about 2 hours north of the city. It's one of those places where everyone knows your business, the kind with old Victorian houses lining Main Street and a frozen lake that kids skate on in winter. My family had lived there for generations. My great-grandfather built our house back in the 1920s after immigrating from Ireland, but we were as American as apple pie by the time I came along. Dad was a mechanic at the local garage, Mom taught 3rd grade, and I was the middle child, sandwiched between my older brother Jake and little sister Mia. Life was predictable until it wasn't. The backstory starts with my grandmother, Eleanor. She died when I was 10, but her stories lingered like smoke from a dying fire. Grandma Ellie, as we called her, was obsessed with the town's history. Willow Creek was founded in the late 1800s on land that once belonged to the Iroquois, but she always whispered about a darker tale. A massacre during the Revolutionary War, where British soldiers slaughtered a group of settlers in a blizzard on New Year's Eve. The survivors, she said, buried the bodies under what became our family home, claiming the land as cursed. The dead don't like celebrations, she'd say, her eyes glazing over. They rise when the clock strikes midnight, jealous of the living. We laughed it off as old lady nonsense, especially after she passed from a heart attack in her sleep. But every New Year's, we'd avoid big parties, sticking to quiet family dinners. Tradition, Mom called it. Fast forward to 2024. I was 28, back home from Brooklyn where I'd been scraping by as a graphic designer. The pandemic had wrecked my freelance gigs, so I moved in with my parents temporarily. Jake was married now, living in Albany with his wife Sarah and their toddler, but they drove down for the holidays. Mia, at 22, was still in college at SUNY Buffalo, studying psychology. We decided to break tradition that year, host a real New Year's bash. We're adults now, Jake argued. No more hiding from Grandma's ghost stories. Mom hesitated, but Dad shrugged it off. Let's make it memorable, he said. We invited the neighbors, the Millers from next door, old Mr. Thompson who ran the hardware store, and a few of my high school friends who'd stuck around town. About 15 people in total. Our house was perfect for it. Big wraparound porch, creaky wooden floors, and a massive living room with a stone fireplace. We decorated with string lights, balloons, and a disco ball Jake brought from the city. Mia curated a playlist of pop hits, and Sarah baked her famous pecan pie. As the sun set on December 31st, snow started falling lightly, blanketing Willow Creek in that eerie silence winter brings. The party kicked off around 8 p.m. Laughter filled the air, glasses clinked, and the smell of mulled wine wafted from the kitchen. I was chatting with my old friend Lisa, who now worked at the town library when the power flickered. Just the wind, Dad said, flipping the breaker. But it happened again 10 minutes later, plunging us into darkness for a full minute. Phones lit up faces like ghosts, and someone joked about the curse. We laughed, but I felt a chill that wasn't from the drafty windows. By 10 p.m., things got weird. Mr. Thompson, usually a quiet drunk, started rambling about seeing shadows in the basement when he went down for more beer. Like people moving, but no one's there, he slurred. We brushed it off. Basement was always creepy, with its dirt floor and exposed beams from the original foundation. Mia, ever the psych major, suggested it was group hysteria from Grandma's stories. But then Sarah screamed from the upstairs bathroom. We rushed up to find her pale, pointing at the mirror. I saw a face, she whispered. Not mine. A man's with blood on his cheek. Jake hugged her, blaming the wine, but I noticed the mirror was fogged up, even though no one had showered. Midnight approached, and the suspense built like a storm. The snow outside turned heavy, winds howling against the shutters. We gathered in the living room for the countdown, Times Square blaring on TV despite the spotty signal. 10, 9. Everyone chanted. My heart pounded, not from excitement, but something else. A unease that clawed at my gut. 8, 7. A thud from the basement, loud like a door slamming. 6, 5. Whispers, faint at first, then clearer. Voices murmuring in the walls. No, couldn't be. 4, 3. The TV staticked out. Lights dimmed. 2, 1. Happy New Year! Cheers erupted, but cut short by a blood-curdling scream from the kitchen. It was Mom. We bolted in to find her on the floor, clutching her arm. Something grabbed me, she gasped. Cold hands. From the pantry. Dad helped her up, but her skin was icy, marked with red fingerprints that looked like frostbite. Panic set in. Phones had no signal. Storm must have knocked out the towers. Mr. Thompson bolted for the door, but it wouldn't budge, like it was frozen shut. Windows too. We're trapped, Lisa whispered. Jake tried breaking a pane with a chair, but the glass held unnaturally strong. cracking but not shattering. That's when the real horror began. Shadows moved in the corners of my vision, fleeting figures in colonial attire, faces gaunt and angry. I thought it was my imagination until Mia saw them too. "Emily, look!" She pointed to the fireplace. Embers flared, and in the glow, I swear I saw eyes staring back. We huddled in the living room, barricading doors with furniture. The whispers grew louder, forming words. Our night, our land. Backstory flooded my mind. Grandma's tales weren't fiction. I grabbed her old journal from the attic stairs. We'd kept it as a memento. Flipping through yellowed pages, I read aloud. The settlers were betrayed. On New Year's Eve, 1777, they celebrated victory, but the soldiers came. Buried alive under the snow, their spirits wait for revelers to join them. A crash from upstairs. Sarah's toddler, little Ben, was crying in the guest room. Jake ran up but returned alone, face ashen. "He's gone. The window's open, but the snow outside is untouched." We searched frantically. Closets, underbeds. Nothing. The clock struck 1 a.m., but time felt warped. One by one, guests vanished. Mr. Thompson into the basement, his screams echoing, then silencing. Lisa, while checking the back door, poof, gone. Each disappearance came with a whisper. "Join us." By 2 a.m., it was just my family left. Dad suggested we burn Grandma's journal, break the curse. But as flames licked the pages, the house shook. Floorboards creaked, revealing hidden compartments. Bones, old, brittle human bones, tumbled out from under the living room rug. The foundation's secret. The spirits materialized then. Translucent soldiers, bayonets gleaming, faces twisted in eternal rage. "You celebrate on our graves," one hissed, voice like cracking ice. They lunged, cold hands phasing through us, draining warmth. Mia collapsed first, eyes rolling back. Jake fought, swinging a poker, but it passed through them. I ran to the attic, the only place left. There in a dusty trunk, I found great-grandfather's letter. "I built this house to contain them, blood for blood, offer a life each new year, or they take all." The family secret. Grandma had known, perhaps, sacrificed strangers over the years. That's why no parties. But it was too late. The spirits cornered me. "Your turn," they chorused. I woke up, or did I? It was morning, January 1st, 2025. Sun streamed through windows that now opened easily. The house was empty. No bodies, no bones. Just me, alone. Police came later, called it a mass disappearance, blaming a gas leak or cult activity. But I know the truth. They took everyone, leaving me to carry the curse. Every New Year's since, I hear the whispers. Waiting. And now, as midnight approaches again, I wonder, will you join the celebration? No, that's not right. This isn't a story. It's my warning. If you're in Willow Creek, stay inside. Don't celebrate. The dead are jealous. But wait, the clock is ticking. Do you hear them? Story 6. I never believed in New Year's resolutions. They were just excuses for people to pretend they could change before the hangover kicked in. But that December 31st in Seattle, everything shifted. My name's Alex Harlan, 32, a freelance coder scraping by in a cramped Belltown apartment overlooking Elliott Bay. The city lights twinkled like false promises, and the Space Needle glowed in the distance, prepping for its annual fireworks show. I'd planned a quiet night. Take out pho from the spot on First Avenue, a six-pack of Rainier, and binge-watching old episodes of The Twilight Zone to ring in 2026. It started with a text from my neighbor, Mrs. Elena Vasquez. She'd lived next door for years, a sweet widow in her late 60s with a thick Colombian accent and stories about her late husband, Raul. Raul had been a longshoreman at the port of Seattle until he vanished one New Year's Eve back in 1987. Elena always said it was the fog off the bay that swallowed him whole. Never found, no body, just his work boots washed up on Alki Beach weeks later. El espíritu del año nuevo lo llevó, she'd whisper through the thin walls. The spirit of the new year took him. Her text read, "Alex, something's wrong. Hear the bell? Come quick. Elena, the bell." I'd heard it faintly all evening, A low, tolling chime drifting up from the street, muffled by the rain-slicked windows. Seattle's perpetual drizzle had turned to a steady pour, drumming on the fire escape. I figured it was some drunk ringing the old ship's bell at the Belltown pub down the block. But Elena sounded scared. I grabbed my hoodie and stepped into the dim hallway, the fluorescent bulb flickering like it always did. Her door was ajar, the chain dangling loose. "Elena?" No answer. Inside, the apartment smelled of strong coffee and cinnamon, her famous buñuelos. The TV blared countdown coverage from Times Square, confetti bursting in pixelated glory. But the living room was empty. A single buñuelo sat half-eaten on a plate, steam still rising. Then I saw the note on the coffee table, scrawled in shaky handwriting. "It's back. The bell calls him every year. Don't let it call you, too. Lock your door." My skin prickled. The bell tolled again, deeper this time, vibrating through the floorboards. It wasn't from the pub. It came from below, like something buried under the building. I backed out, heart thudding, and double-locked my own door. Elena was probably just spooked by old memories. I poured a beer, tried to laugh it off. But as midnight approached, the text kept coming. From her number, "Alex, it's starting. The fog is rising. Help me. He's here." I peered out the window. The bay was shrouded in an unnatural fog, thick and swirling, creeping up Virginia Street like fingers. Streetlights blurred into halos. No one on the sidewalks. No revelers, no taxis. Just that bell, tolling relentlessly. Dong, dong. At 11:55 p.m., a scream pierced the night. Elena's scream. It came from the alley behind the building, the one shared with the old brick warehouse next door. I grabbed my phone's flashlight and bolted down the stairs, ignoring the rational voice screaming to stay put. The lobby door creaked open to a wall of fog, cold and briny, tasting of salt and decay. "Elena!" My voice echoed weirdly, swallowed by the mist. The alley was a narrow slit between our building and the warehouse, littered with dumpsters and puddles reflecting the needle's lights. Her scream came again, from the warehouse side. I edged around the corner, phone light cutting feeble beams. There, her slippered foot sticking out from behind a dumpster. Blood smeared the pavement, dark and glossy. I knelt, stomach churning. Elena lay twisted, throat slashed ear to ear, eyes wide in frozen terror. In her rigid hand, clutched like a lifeline, was a small brass bell, ornate, etched with faded script. Port of Seattle, 1923. R.V. Raul Vasquez's bell. How? It was supposed to be lost with him. Footsteps splashed behind me, heavy, deliberate. I spun, light shaking, nothing but fog. But the bell in my mind told louder, syncing with my pulse. Dong, dong. I ran back to the lobby, slamming the door, punching 911. "Murder! 2152nd Avenue. My neighbor's dead." The line crackled, then static. No signal. Of course, fog messing with the towers. Back in my apartment, I barricaded the door with the couch. The countdown on TV hit 11:59. Fireworks popped faintly over the bay, drowned by the bell. That's when the knocking started. Slow, rhythmic, matching the tolls. Knock, knock. Not on my door, on the walls, the ceiling, the floor, like something circling, testing. I remembered Elena's stories now, piecing them together in panic. Raul hadn't just vanished. He'd been hearing the bell too, every New Year's. Started after a storm unearthed something at the docks, an old shipwreck from the 1920s, a freighter called Echo Mariner that sank with its crew during Prohibition. Smugglers, they said, hauling bootleg whiskey and worse. The wreck washed up near Duwamish Head, but the bodies never did. Locals whispered the crew was cursed, trapped in the fog, ringing their bell to lure the living, claiming souls at midnight to break free. Elena said Raul found the bell while dredging the port. He kept it as a souvenir, hung it in their old house. But every New Year's Eve, it rang on its own. Raul went mad, ranting about echoes in the fog calling his name. He walked into the bay that night in '87, bell in hand, and never came back. Now it had Elena, and it wanted more. Knock, Knock. Dong. The power flickered. My laptop screen showed security cams I'd hacked into the building's feed. Grainy black and white. Empty hallways. Then in the lobby, a shadow. Tall, hunched, wearing oilskins like an old fisherman, face obscured by a sou'wester hat dripping fog. It carried a brass bell, swinging gently. It looked up, straight at the camera. The feed cut. I grabbed a kitchen knife, backed into the bedroom. The fire escape window rattled. Wind? No. A handprint smeared the glass, pale and webbed, like it had been underwater too long. Midnight struck. Fireworks exploded over the needle, illuminating the fog in strobing bursts. The bell tolled triumphant. Dong, dong, dong! And the door splintered inward. Wood shards flew as the couch skidded across the floor. It stood there, reeking of dead fish and diesel. 6 foot something, skin mottled gray like harbor sludge, eyes milky white but locked on me. In one gnarled hand, the bell, in the other a rusted gaff hook crusted with barnacles. And blood. Raoul, I whispered, knife trembling. It tilted its head, mouth splitting in a lipless grin. Echo, it rasped, voice like gravel under boots. Join the echo. I swung the knife. It caught the arm. Shallow but black ichor oozed. The thing didn't flinch. It lunged, hook whistling. I dodged, crashing into the TV. Times Square cheered, Happy New Year, as the hook gouged my shoulder, fire blooming. We grappled, tumbling toward the window. Up close, I saw the truth. Not Raoul. Beneath the decayed longshoreman facade, features shifted, dozens of faces, layered like drowned ghosts. The Echo Mariner's crew fused into one hungry abomination. Elena's blood still dripped from the hook. Raoul's boots were laced on its feet. It pinned me, bell raised to toll inches from my face. The chime would claim me, bind my soul to the fog, ringing eternally for new victims every New Year's. Desperate, I remembered the note. Don't let it call you. My free hand fumbled Elena's phone in my pocket. She must have slipped it to me somehow. I smashed it against the bell. Sparks flew. The phone's battery ignited, flames licking the brass. The thing howled, a chorus of drowned screams. Fire spread fast, oilskins crackling. It reared back, bell shrieking discordant. I kicked free, grabbed the hook, and drove it through its chest. No heart, just fog and rot spilling out. It staggered to the shattered door, collapsing in the hallway as flames consumed it. The bell clanged one final broken toll. I stumbled to the window, gasping. Fog receded with the dawn, fireworks fading. Sirens wailed, cops finally responding. But as I bandaged my shoulder, something glinted in the debris. A shard of brass from the bell, etched with Echo Mariner. I should have destroyed it, burned it. But New Year's resolutions, right? I pocketed it, a souvenir. Now it's December 31st again. 2026 ticks toward midnight. The fog's rolling in off the bay early this year, and faintly from my pocket I hear it. Dong.